Hi, and welcome to Hanaz Writers Podcast. My name's Charlotte, and I work as a Year 2 teacher in a primary school in London. If you haven't heard any podcasts from Hanaz Writers before, then have a listen on their YouTube and Spotify channels. You can search for them on both websites, and you can start listening to the podcasts that they have available. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking about the author Agatha Christie. Now, Agatha Christie was born in 1890 and she died in 1976. She was an English author who wrote many murder mystery stories, and she gave us two famous detective characters, Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot. During her career, she wrote 66 detective novels, countless short tales, and even gave us the world's longest running play, The Mousetrap. Her reputation as one of the best-selling authors of all time is cemented by the fact that her writings, which have been translated into innumerable languages, are still adapted for television, theatre, and movies. Her famous detective, Hercule Poirot, was depicted as a world-famous Belgian private detective. He was intelligent, he understood the criminal mind, and was able to solve mysteries that other police detectives just couldn't solve. Agatha's famous novel, Murder on the Orient Express, was turned into a television series and released in 2010. It was starring David Suchet, I hope I say his name right, David Suchet or David Suchet, as the infamous detective. And the other stars included Jessica Chastain, Toby Jones, David Morrissey, Hugh Bonneville, and many others were starring in the TV show. Then in 2017, they created a movie for the Murder on the Orient Express. And this movie was actually showcased on Netflix at the time. And it had Kenneth Branagh as the detective, Hercule Poirot. And it included some other famous stars, such as Penelope Cruz. It had Johnny Depp and Willem Dafoe, just to name a few. There were a few more others, so there's too many to name at the moment. So the movie was very popular at the time, and it was showing on Netflix as well, because I remember, I think I watched it at that point. It was such a good movie. So if you're excited about Agatha Christie and you want to watch her movie, Murder on the Orient Express, it was a really good one. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's still streaming on Netflix at the moment. You might have to do a bit of a search and look for the movie. So if you like Agatha Christie, or if you're interested in reading any of her stories, because she was a really good writer, she created lots of different novels for Hercule Poirot. And looking online, I found the top 10 Poirot novels. And they are, number one, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. And this is actually the first story in the Poirot novel series. And it's about Poirot being the Belgian detective, and he's a refugee at this point. And he has to stay at a country estate, and the country estate is called Styles. During his stay, Poirot meets a soldier who's called Hastings, and Hastings is friends with the person who's hosting Hastings and Poirot in his house. Then the host is mysteriously murdered. He's actually poisoned, and Poirot steps in to find the killer. And that's the very first story. That kind of showcases Poirot and his intelligence and his detective-like mind. So yeah, if you're interested in how it all began, Mysterious Affair at Styles is the very first novel to start with. The next novel, number 2, is called Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And then, of course, The Murder on the Orient Express, number 3. Number 4 was after that. Number 4 was The ABC Murders. And it was followed, number 5, by Death on the Nile. Number 6, Hercule Poirot's Christmas. And then number 7, Evil Under the Sun. Number 8 is called The Five Little Pigs, or Five Little Pigs. Number 9 is After the Funeral. And then the final book in the Poirot series is called Curtain, which is, like, I guess at the end of the theatre, the curtains are dropped or closed, curtains for you. And in Curtain, in this last book, Agatha Christie sends Poirot and his friend Hastings. They go back to where the first book started. It was set in the country estate of Styles. And in the first book, it was one of Poirot's friends' country estates, and it was where he found, he started off his career. In the last book, the country estate, it becomes a boarding house. So in Curtain, it's a boarding house, and the residents are being mysteriously murdered in there. So Poirot has to go back to investigate the murders and try to find the killer before it's too late. So if you're interested in her novels on Hercule Poirot, I say have a look. There's at least these 10 different books that you can go and read. I would say, start from the first one and then read on from there. Agatha Christie's other famous detective character she created is Miss Marple, of course. Now, Miss Marple is depicted as an elderly lady. She was not your usual detective, as she writes in her stories, and she doesn't look like a detective. But she was still a world-class detective, and she's able to solve crimes while knitting and gardening and gossiping. Oh, well, not my words. This is from Agatha Christie's own words in her novels. So her first novel, which introduces Miss Marple to the world, was called The Tuesday Night Club, and it was actually a collection of short stories that she put together in a collection called The 13 Problems. And it was first published in 1927 in a December issue of the Royal Magazine. And Agatha actually never expected Miss Marple to become such a hit with the public. But after that published book and the short stories, she found that Miss Marple was becoming a favourite with the fans. And so she then decided to write a full-length novel for Miss Marple. And the first novel that she made, it was called The Murder at the Vicarage. And she created that book in 1930. So she'd been very busy since her Hercule Poirot book took off. Let's see, when did she start writing about Hercule Poirot? Yeah, since around the same time, probably. So around 1927. And then in 1930, she wrote a full-length novel for Miss Marple, and she found that she had a huge fan base for her. And in 1984 to 1992, Miss Marple even had a BBC series where Joan Hickson was portrayed as Miss Marple. So if you're interested in reading more novels featuring Miss Marple, there are actually 15 stories for her. So she has a bit more than Poirot. Poirot only had 10. So if you want to read them in order, her first book, of course, was The Murder at the Vicarage, and that was her published full-length novel for Miss Marple. Then the second was The 13 Problems, which was part of the Tuesday Night Club short stories put together. Then number 3 is Miss Marple's Final Cases. Then number 4, The Body in the Library. Number 5 is called The Moving Finger. Number 6 is called Sleeping Murder. Number 7, A Murder is Announced. Number 8, They Do It with Mirrors. And number 9, A Pocket Full of Rye. Number 10 is called Greenshaw's Folly. Number 11 is The 450 from Paddington. Number 12, The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side. Number 13, A Caribbean Mystery. Number 14, At Bertram's Hotel. And number 15, the final book for Miss Marple, is called Nemesis. So there's quite a lot of novels that she's written for this lady. So yeah, if you're really interested in murder mysteries and you just want a really good story to get your teeth into, then yeah, read Agatha Christie's books on Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. And before I finish, I just wanted to add that during Agatha Christie's life, before she even started writing her novels, she volunteered as a nurse and a dispenser during World War One. And it was kind of during this time where she was inspired, I guess, to write her novels, because she used her knowledge and her experience that she'd gained during that time and wrote them into her stories to give them that kind of more real life detail to them. She even visited the Middle East a lot, and she married archaeologist Max Mallowan, which kind of then inspired her to develop more exotic settings for her story. So I'm guessing that's where the Caribbean story, a Caribbean mystery kind of then fitted in. I'm not sure about, to be fair, I haven't read the other books, so I'm not sure where the settings are for the other books, but I'm guessing the Caribbean mystery is definitely based in the Caribbean. um, of course, the Murder on the Orient Express is the train that goes through Europe. So yeah, so when she probably kind of mixed that in, which is quite a nice story for Poirot. Um, a little bit more about Agatha Christie. She was a reclusive person, and despite there was an abduction I didn't know about, but she was abducted in 1926, but it wasn't really publicized, even though it was well known. But she continued to write mysteries anyway, and she continued to serve as an inspiration to every mystery author in the world. On January the 12th in 1976, she died quietly in her Winterbrook, Oxfordshire home, and then she was buried at St Mary's Church in Cholsley. And her impact still persists even after she's passed away. All her novels are still there, and they're available to read from the library, or if you want to buy them on Amazon, then please do. And they're in also the theatres as well, and her TV shows, of course, all across the world. And lots of people then, fans and authors and readers, visit her tomb to say, pay respects to her. And that's all for this podcast. So thank you very much for listening about Agatha Christie and for commemorating her. If you are interested in any of her books and stories, then please find them online. Please do read them and find out a little bit more about these wonderful detectives, Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. If you like to listen to more podcasts, then like and subscribe to Hanaz Writers YouTube channel or Spotify channels. You can also follow them on Facebook, and their handle is @hanaz.writers. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time, bye!